Evan Freeman, and this is Candidates Night for 2024. This evening, we're going to meet candidates for the Sanitary District Board of Trustees. We'll meet the lone candidate for a seat open for the Board of Education. And then at 7 p.m., we will start with the candidates running for 3 seats. It's 2 separate elections. And we'll meet them at 7 o'clock. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our candidates for the Sanitary District Board of Trustees. We recognize both of them, especially the guy in red, Nick Rico, a longtime trustee. He is currently the superintendent of the Wells Sanitary District. He's worked in Kennebunk and he's worked for the city of Portland. He's a Tufts University grad with a chemical engineering degree and a master's in civil engineering. Nick is a notable volunteer around town, most notably at St. Maximilian Colby Church. Welcome, Nick Rico. And alongside Nick, and I kind of think of this as kind of Steve Martin and Martin Short. You know, they're a good team. They're a good team. Mike Stein is seeking his second full term. He actually started. He took the place of Ben Viola, who was a longtime trustee, and but Mike is a senior PM with Wright Pierce Engineering. He is a grad of Purdue University and holds a civil engineering degree. So both are from the industry, and both have given their time volunteering as trustees on the sanitary district. And with that, I'd like to give opening statements first to Nick Rico.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. I just wanted to say that I've been on the Board of Trustees for Scarborough Sanitary District since 1999. I've been in the environmental field since 1988. You know, we in the water industry are the original environmentalists. We've been protecting human health, your health, for over 150 years. We've been protecting the environment for over 150 years. The folks at the sanitary district are heroes of mine. They are providing this great community of ours, you know, keeping the marsh and the beaches clean. There are heroes. I've been on the district for a while now because I work at a district and I sit on this board. I bring a lot of experience to help Scarborough out, and it works both ways. I've learned a lot from the Scarborough Sanitary District. So I hope you vote for both of us. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Mike Stein.
Thank you, Kevin. As Kevin said, my name is Mike Stein, and I'm seeking my second re-election here for the Scarborough Sanitary District. One of the things I found out in my first term is just how well-run of an organization the Scarborough Sanitary District is. And being part of, being one member of the seven-member board of trustees, I found to be enlightening. And with my civil engineering degree and working in the field of wastewater engineering, I feel that I can certainly and have contributed to the board and to the district. And to echo what Nick said, we certainly appreciate your vote on November 5th.
Great. That is the date, November 5th, but early voting is beginning here imminently in Scarborough. And of course, the absentee voting, you can get, there's so much information on the Town of Scarborough elections website, which is just on the, scarborough.org. But if you go to the elections page, there's just a lot of information. I spent some time on there today, just checking it out. And we have a lot of questions coming in from the people here in the council chambers. If you're at home watching and have a question, you can get us by email. hello@sedcomaine.com. hello sedcomaine.com if you have any questions you'd like to ask us live here tonight on September 25th. I do have a question already from the audience. Nick, I'll go to you first. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the district in the next 10 years?
Resiliency. We are dealing with sea level rise in an intimate fashion. We had one of our pump stations flooded out, not once but twice in January, and it was eye-opening how powerful nature is. I think that is the biggest challenge we have to face as a district. All our pump stations and the treatment plant are usually at the lowest point in the town and always close to a water body. So that's our biggest challenge for the next 10 years.
Mike?
I agree. Resiliency is probably the #1 challenge. Along with that, just keeping the equipment up to date. The district, the treatment plant was built in the early 1980s. And a lot of the useful life of equipment is coming due, and the district is doing a great job in keeping up to date with that.
Great. Hey, Mike, a question came in and it is pertinent. I mean, I think we all, what we saw in December and then again in January and again in late March was just things that we have not seen here. I certainly in the time that I've lived in Southern Maine, which is over 30 years. Mike, how do we deal with the ongoing increasing incidents of flooding on Route 1 and Pine Point Road?
That's part of the continuing challenge with the resiliency. Just that's just the ongoing work that we just have to keep ahead of, which makes it the challenge.
Nick?
The road work is more the bailiwick of the town, but I would agree with Mike that, you know, if the sea's gonna be this high, our road's gonna be this high or higher, just to get ahead of it.
Now, I was asking when you first got here, the investments that you're making now, we may not necessarily see because it's equipment inside your buildings. Were those planned with climate change in mind or?
Yes, the resiliency was planned in the design for the upgrade at the pump station at Pine Point on Snows Canning Road. And, you know, the treatment plant is buffered to some degree because it is a bit higher. Everything is pumped up to it. The equipment that is getting upgraded there, you're right. Most people won't see that. It's indoors, but it's necessary equipment. And, you know, as Mike said, equipment only lasts so long. And when it's done with its useful life, we have to replace it.
I live west of the turnpike as do more and more people in Scarborough. What are the pros and cons of extending the lines west of I-95? Mike?
To extend the lines west of Interstate 95, there's a couple of hurdles. One is the turnpike itself. How are we going to get underneath it, or how are we going to get across it? Plus the fact that if there is an expansion west of the turnpike, who is going to pay for that? How is that going to be funded? So those are two of the major things that need to be looked at, and plus the fact for the amount of money that you're gonna spend to expand the sewer, how many additional users are you gonna be able to pick up?
And correct me if I'm wrong, I think the area that would possibly get it would be for that FedEx facility at the old Beach Ridge Motor Speedway.
Well, Kevin, you can do the math. It's about $2 million per mile to put sewer in. And it's eminently more expensive to maintain it over the course of its lifetime. I think by focusing on resiliency and upgrading the assets we already have is more prudent with our customers' money.
Okay, thank you, Nick. I've got one last question and then we'll move on to give you statements. And this is about sludge disposal. What is our current risk from growth? And is our infrastructure in a good state to absorb growth over the next 10 years?
Our infrastructure is in great shape for growth over the next 10 years because the district's been well planned and we're seeing the growth now. As for sludge disposal, that's a big question mark. Right now, our big project in the plant is upgrading the sludge dewatering equipment. So essentially what we do is we separate the solids and we clean the wastewater. So whatever comes in, the solids settle out. We call that sludge, biosolids. Call it 2% solid, 80 or 98% water. And this equipment basically dries it. And it's 20% solids and 80% water. Then we ship it off to get taken care of. Right now, we ship it to landfills, and there's limited space for landfills for sludge. And I don't want to get into the details, but it's hard to build a landfill with our product. We need to do something more prudent with that product, and that's another form of resiliency we need to deal with. Right now, we're either putting it in a landfill or shipping it out of state or out of the country. We as Mainers should take care of our own stuff.
I'd like to just ask one more question because reading this question kind of leads to the big elephant in the room, and that's the PFAS problem at Brunswick Landing. Mike, what precautions, what measures are taken by the sanitary district to ensure the safety for Scarborough residents?
Great question. That's one of the initiatives that the district is working on right now. And I don't really have anything more to add. Do you have anything to add more with that?
PFAS is a 4-letter word. And unfortunately, it is so pervasive that it is in all of us. And the way to take care of PFAS is at the source. Stop making it, and it'll eventually go away. The challenge is it's so convenient. We all are wearing it right now. It's in our sneakers, our boots, our Gore-Tex. That's the challenge, is the convenience. If we could get off the PFAS, it would disappear from our wastewater and our sludge.
Thanks, Rick.
Simple answer.
Thank you, Nick. And that it's kind of a loaded question in that I was at a conference a few weeks ago where it was being talked about, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere in Maine. It's everywhere in the United States. It's everywhere across the globe. And people are taking the measures to address it now. But thank you for at least giving us the sanitary district's view of it. With that, this is an abbreviated time because you're running for 3-year terms with no one else. The 2 seats, 2 candidates. Nick Rico, if you could give us your closing comments.
Mike's a great guy. Vote for him, please. And if you really want, you can vote for me too.
Mike Stein.
Thank you, Nick. But I know with Rico being ahead of Stein on the ballot, chances are Nick will get more votes, but that's okay. No, I certainly look forward to another 3 years, just like Nick does, to serving on the sanitary district. And I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick Rico and Mike Stein. You're professionals in your careers, and thank you for your dedication volunteering for the town of Scarborough. And with that, we will make the switch to the Board of Education and meet our candidate in a few minutes. It's Candidates Night in Scarborough 2024. '24 from the Scarborough Town Hall here in the council chambers at Town Hall on Route 1. And we're moving to the Board of Education, which we all thought we didn't do anymore in November. But you know, the elections have moved to June for the Board of Education, but we've had a person who had to, Carolyn Gammon, had to step down from her position. So a candidate came forward to fill her 2-year term. And that is Mitchell Rockensteyer, who joins us up up all alone up front. Mitchell is born and raised in Scarborough and is a recent graduate of Scarborough High School. And interestingly, he is a graduate of the Landing School in Arundel. Yeah, and that's a shipbuilding, boat building school, and he's graduated from that school and is now passing that on to as a teacher, helping kids learn to sail and has stepped forward to take a seat on the Board of Education. So welcome, Mitch. And can I call you Mitch or Mitchell?
Either one works.
Okay.
Either way.
Feel free to give an opening statement on why you're interested in running.
Well, as we've all figured out, my name's Mitchell. I'm running for the school board. Was an open seat, so someone's got to fill that. And considering I've recently been through the Scarborough system, I understand as a student what it's like to go through the Scarborough system K through 12. And I just wanted to help bring in my experience from that and then moving on to college afterwards and just help with making our school system a stronger, safer system for all students throughout the system.
Thanks, Mitch.
Any questions?
There's some questions for you. There's always questions for the Board of Education. Mitch, the first question that came in is, a citizens committee has explored 4 different school location options. Which do you think is most viable?
Well, that's an excellent question that I don't have an answer to now because I don't have all the information yet, having not been on the board. But I do think we should like work towards finding a better school for our younger students, but also keeping costs to a reasonable level. But I believe that what we have now does work for the time being, but we do need to figure out for future resiliency to make it stronger for future students. I can't say on the location yet, though.
Mitch, shared with me, and I kind of put two and two together, that Mitch graduated with my daughter from Scarborough High School. Having that, not that long ago, what do you bring to the table, having gone and been a student so recently?
Well, having been a student so recently, I can sort of speak from a student's perspective, but having also taught, I can also kind of speak from a teacher's perspective, not the same as a teacher from our wonderful system, but I feel like I have this unique perspective that we can apply to nights when we meet and everything to bring this different perspective that isn't seen by people who have been out of a school system for 20, 30 years, where I can speak to students directly and with a little bit more ease to figure out, hey, what's going on in the system? What do you notice as a student? What do you want solved as well as parents, having been making my transition as into a young adult?
Thanks, Mitch. Another question that came from our audience here at Town Hall. Why do you think the bond for the new school failed? And what needs to be different if the town moves ahead with putting another bond before the voters? And, that's suggested to be a year from now.
I don't have a clear answer. There are many people voting, many people saying this should be this way, this should be this way. I'm here to listen and learn from everyone. So I can't have a clear statement as to why the bond failed. Some people may have thought it was too expensive. Some people might have not thought it was enough money to put towards a school. So there's plenty of different things that could have happened, but I do not know why that bond specifically failed. And I will have to talk with people, talk with the public, and see what they want with our new school and what bond if we do go that route.
Mitch, and again, if you have questions, just pass them towards Karen Martin here from Sedco in the front row. Mitch, you were a student of the Superintendent Neto. Do you feel like you have an understanding of how she is and how you can work with her as a board member?
Well, as a student, there's not much contact between you and the superintendent. Usually the person you go to and speak to the most, if you are speaking to anyone in admin, is like the principal or something. So I haven't worked with Neto personally, but I'm happy to learn and figure out what we can do and work together as a team to figure out how to get our school system moving in a way it should, or people think it should.
So you went to one of the neighborhood schools. That is a question that comes back and forth. The benefits of having the neighborhood schools versus the economic benefits of having a central school that would be more efficient to run operationally. What are your feelings about the two types of schools that we could have?
There are pros and cons to both of them. Like neighborhood schools get these small core groups of friends that you build at a young age, but it also leads to this moment when you're transitioning into the community school where it's like, oh, new people, I get to meet new friends, new faces, all these people you get to meet. Where if you consolidate it all, I don't want to say stuck with the same people for 12 years or 12, 13 years, but adds an extra layer of socialization and things that you don't get with a consolidated school. But with a consolidated school, you can already make those connections, make those like groups of people from a young age and stick with them through high school. So there's two different ways of socializing that you learn from it. You get to get thrown into this big basket and be like, I've never met you before, new friends. But that is something that you can look at with a neighborhood schools versus the consolidated system.
Mitch, your time in school, a portion of it was during the pandemic where remote learning became a requirement. And we see in a lot of cases, the results that came from that, lower test scores, some of the mental health portions of it, you know, the not being able to socialize in person. What are your feelings about kind of the interplay between technology, using technology that allows versus hands-on, which is something that you do as a boat builder?
Well, hands-on learning has its benefits and technology learning both have their benefits. It depends on the student and each student has their own requirements for learning. So some students, it's better where they're hands-on building a boat, figuring out how all these pieces fit together. Where other students, it's better to watch a video and be like, oh, this is how you do it. And someone showed me. Or some people, it's even better to just read it. So there's multiple different paths to learning. And something with Scarborough, I felt when I was as a student, for the hands-on piece, it felt slightly lackluster, but it's still a good amount of like learning when you're in the school because we have other options where we can go to PASS or WVRC to learn more hands-on trades out of our own system. But I feel like we need to try to encourage that a little bit more because I went through the system, in 7th and 8th grade were the only times I ever had a shop class in Scarborough. It was in the middle school. But when we got to high school, it was, oh, this is all pen and paper now. There's nothing to kind of really establish that creativity, establish that hands-on work, unless you're doing extracurriculars like robotics or things like that.
Thanks, Mitch. A question from our audience. As a former student, what do you think the greatest strengths of the Scarborough school system? And what would you like to see change or be different over the next 2 years as a Board of Education member?
Well, like I just mentioned, encouraging STEM a little bit more, trying to get more people wanting to do that. And as a student, there were amazing opportunities I got when I was in Scarborough. Actually, I got to go toward the landing school where I went to go through college, but there was also all these other excellent teachers I had throughout my school's like career here at Scarborough. And there was plenty of like choices when it came to normal, well, not really normal, but more in classroom learning. There were excellent teachers, excellent curriculums, good ways to learn things that require pen and paper, like history, where you can't just go build history. You can go read and learn history or see it through a slideshow. But there are a lot of strong teachers and a lot of strong individuals in our school system that I feel they have a decent amount of resources, but we can also help them and encourage them, help more students throughout their learning.
Thank you, Mitchell Rockensteyer. I'm going to give you a little bit just to ready yourself for a closing statement. But Mitchell is a lifelong resident of Scarborough. He graduated from Scarborough High School and also from the Landing School in Arundel. And he's now teaching kids on his own and has the boat building school skills that came from his postgraduate or after graduating from Scarborough High School. Mitch has stepped forward to take the remaining 2 years of Carolyn Gammon's term on the Board of Education after she had to step down. So with that, Mitchell Rockensteyer, why don't you give us your closing statement?
I look forward to seeing your votes in November, and I greatly appreciate every vote that comes my way, even though may not be other people stepping up to the challenge at hand. Yeah. Also, everyone, have a good night.
Thanks a lot, Mitchell Rockenstein. We'll be back with the town council candidates after this break. To the Scarborough Town Hall and Candidates Night for 2024. I'm Kevin Freeman. I am hosting it again this year with a lot of help from the Scarborough Community Chamber, who puts this on, and the Scarborough Economic Development Corporation, which always helps out. And helping out from SEDCO is the Director of SEDCO, Karen Martin. And on the Chamber of Commerce side, the president of the chamber, Leroy Crockett, and a new resident to town, replacing Nancy Kroll, who always helped, is our new library director, Chip Schrader. So we thank you and welcome you, Chip, to our yearly get-together here in the council chambers. We are moving along, and we are now on the town council portion of our program. This year we have 2 3-year terms open. And we have 3 candidates running for those 2 seats. And these are the seats that were held by Don Hamill and by Nick McGee. And so those are big shoes to fill. And then we have another pair of shoes to fill in the lone seat, which will be to fill the 2 remaining years on Jean Marie Caterina's seat. And stepping forward for that is Bill Donovan, who will be running unopposed. So we've got a competitive race for 2 seats between Scott Doherty, Corey Fellows, and Cressia Mauer. I hope I got that right. Cressy. Okay, second time is the charm. So let me do the introductions of the people running for the town council. Back with us this year, running for the 3rd time, but he took a little break, ran in 2008 and then ran last year, is Scott Doherty. Scott is a native-born native son of Scarborough, born and raised here, and a graduate of Scarborough High School, class of 1981. He's been a lobsterman his entire career. Since age 17, you've had your own business, but lobstering your entire life. Scott has also taken the time. He's been a volunteer in town. He's been on the sanitary district. He has volunteered on the Maine Lobster Council. In between, raised 4 kids, and very nice to see you again, Scott Doherty. Running is another familiar face, and it's Corey Fellows. Corey is a 20-year Scarborough resident. He served on the planning board from 2007 through 2018. Including 4 years as the chair. And he was a member of the town's long-range planning committee from 2013 to 2021. He's also volunteered with Scarborough Little League, the Scarborough Marsh Audubon Center, and the Scarborough Land Trust. Corey holds a bachelor's degree from Colgate University and a master's in city planning from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He has worked in the affordable housing industry for over 25 years and is vice president for real estate development at the nonprofit Preservation of Affordable Housing. Corey and his wife Katie have 3 sons, all of whom are recent Scarborough High School grads. Welcome, Corey Fellows. Cressie Mauer has lived in Scarborough for over 5 years and works part-time at Cabela's and the Scarborough Land Trust. She is an enthusiastic gardener, walker, and nature lover. She is awed by the beauty and expanse of Scarborough's marsh, which is what drew her to join the board of the Friends of the Scarborough Marsh before it merged with the Land Trust. Cressie has worked as a Spanish language instructor, policy analyst, consultant, and project manager. She's worked at the community level, both domestically and internationally, including in Brazil, Chile, and Peru. Her history of community service includes appointments to 2 town committees, volunteering as a beach monitor, 2 terms as a planning commissioner, in board leadership of a Friends of the Library organization, as well as a cooperative nursery school. She holds a Master's of Environmental Management from Duke University and an undergraduate degree from Pomona College. Cressy was born in Peru and is fluent in Spanish and Portuguese. She is married to a wildlife biologist and has 3 children, Conrad, Elise, and Ian. Welcome, Cressy. So those are our 3 candidates for the 2 3-year terms. And over to the right, my right, is Bill Donovan. And Bill is a familiar face, having served on the Public Library Board for over 5 years, serving as president until just recently. He also serves on the Town of Scarborough Affordable Housing Alliance. Prior to that, he served 2 terms on the Scarborough Town Council from 2013 to 2019. Bill retired from practicing law in 2011, and for the previous 40 years before retirement, specialized in municipal and healthcare law in an 80-person firm. During the 10 years before retiring, he was the managing partner of that firm. And during his law practice years, he also served on school boards, planning boards, and recreation commissions. He grew up in the Boston area. He's a Boston sports fan. And I learned today that he played varsity baseball for Dartmouth and football. So we'll have to talk about that sometime. Welcome, Bill Donovan.
Thank you.
So we've got, roughly until 8:30. And why don't we start off with opening statements? And with his opening statement is Scott Doherty.
On there. And I ran as a write-in candidate in 2008. And I didn't get in because it was a write-in candidate, so it's almost impossible to get in as a write-in candidate. But so then I get my paperwork together this time. I'm just frustrated with the way the town's going. I don't like the spending. I've been frustrated for many years with the spending, and I just says somebody's got to just get up and do this. And Don Hamill was about the closest thing to getting things organized, and he was by himself here, and I guess I'm gonna be that way too. So if you vote for me, you don't have much chance if you don't like the way I think, because I ain't gonna win most of the time anyway. But lots of things in town. Fees, taxes, everything. It's just spending's out of control in the country. Government is out of control in spending right down to the municipals. And I don't know, everybody is fine with it, I guess, but they did vote against the $160 million school. I guess that's the line, is finally they said no. The police fire station, I remember when Betty's was there, they had to have Betty's. They had to get rid of Betty and get her out of there and expand on the police station and build a new police station. They did, and they built a new police station. And then 15, 20 years later, they needed another one because the roof was leaking, I guess. And then the people voted for it. But I think if the people had known that what was built was going to be built, they wouldn't have voted for it, I don't think. It went over budget, So I guess the only platform I'm running on is basically stop the spending. That's my platform, as simple as that. I'm all for schools. I am for the small schools staying there. I'm all for expanding them if they need it. Obviously, if we're having a lot of growth in town, you're gonna have to have more room for, schoolrooms. So I'd be all for that. And that's what community is about. Taxes are supposed to be for, police, fire, roads, schools. I think when you get to taxing people for their activities and recreation, I think you should just let them keep their tax money and recreate themselves the way they want to recreate. I think government's getting too big and, you know, trying to appease everybody and make recreation for everyone in town. And I myself would rather keep my money and not do what the town tells me I have to do for recreation.
Okay, well, thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
And Chip, you can put your hand down now. That's on me. It's 2 minutes and I did not tell you to direct you that Chip will let you know when we're at that. And I failed to do that, when I was up talking to you all before. So, we can go a little bit over, and you know, that's to be expected, but Chip will try to keep us in line. He took Nancy's job. So with our second opening statement is Corey Fellows.
Thank you and good evening. For those who may not know me, I live on Snowberry Drive over in the Pine Point area, kind of around the corner from Bailey's Campground. Our three sons all attended Scarborough schools from Blue Point Primary, speaking of local schools, up through the high school, graduating within the last few years. We've lived in three different parts of town, starting at Maple Ave, over by Oak Hill, then to Dunstan, and now in the Pine Point area. And it's no accident that each time our circumstances have changed and we decided to move, we decided to stay in Scarborough. We've put down deep roots here and we're fully invested. We love this town and want to try to sort of continue to make it better. As mentioned in my bio, I previously served on the planning board and the long range planning committee. While on the planning board, I spent many late nights in this room, many of them actually in this seat. And I have to be honest, it was kind of nice to step away for a while after nearly 12 years and have some more time for family, hobbies, and even a little more sleep. But I knew I always wanted to stay connected and find other ways to serve. I'm running for council now because I think this really is a critical moment for the town, one that really calls for solution-oriented leadership. And I believe that my experience and the relationships that I've built here in town and beyond would be an asset to the council and to the community. My three main priorities, and obviously there are many more issues than this for the town, but my three biggest priorities are, number one, keeping Scarborough affordable. That's both in terms of housing and sort of the general cost of living. Recognize that that's a major concern. That includes supporting a range of housing types, including some more multifamily where it's appropriate. Promoting property tax stability, meaning that increases are manageable and predictable, and making sure that we're doing all that we can to safeguard and where there are opportunities, expand programs that help give some relief for those who are a little more vulnerable because they may be on fixed incomes. I think we should proactively support our schools with the emphasis on proactively, so we're not always on the defensive. The school board's not always on the defensive. Again, there are some really legitimate concerns about spending. I get that. But I think we need to do that both through this ongoing building planning process that is on everyone's mind, as well as through annual budgets that really equip our kids and our teachers for success. And at the risk of sounding a little bit corny, I believe we should view our children as our future and not just as financial burdens or liabilities, which it sometimes feels like is the case when we have some of these discussions. So, and then the third is protecting the natural environment. By carefully managing growth, we have a robust zoning ordinance and a long-term plan that really tries to direct growth toward designated centers where we already have infrastructure. And I think we can continue to do that. We can continue to build on that. I think there are some specific achievable steps that we can take to protect what we have here, including supporting the land bond. And so, spoiler alert, I support that. And again, sort of just really being smart about growth. I don't think we can stop growth. We're part of a growing region. There are a lot of good reasons why people want to be here, and I think we should welcome that. So those are really my priorities in the spirit in which I want to serve, and I look forward to tonight's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey Fellows. As moderator, I have now just added a minute to opening statements, so Chip doesn't have to put his hand up. So Cressy Mauer, your opening statement, and 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Cressy Maurer. I lived in Scarborough for more than 5 years, and I'm really passionate about this town and our community. The reason I'm running is that I see that Scarborough is facing some really big challenges and believe that I can contribute to tackling some of them. I'm a problem solver, I'm a team player, and I'm a community builder. So my job experience has taught me to work with people from all different walks of life. I've worn many hats professionally. I currently work at Cabela's as an outfitter, and I'm also a part-time, and I'm also part-time at the Scarborough Land Trust as a program coordinator. But I've also been a Spanish teacher. I've been a consultant, a policy analyst, and a project manager. So I've done a lot of different jobs. My community service has included volunteering as a beach monitor and joining the board of the Friends of Scarborough Marsh before it merged with the Land Trust. I think the biggest challenge facing Scarborough is how best to manage its growth and the congestion we're finding while protecting the natural assets that we have at the heart of our town's identity, as well as its economy. You know, our fisheries and shellfish industry, our tourism, real estate, commerce, and farming. I think, you know, without that, protecting those natural assets, we're endangering our own local economy. I believe the path that Scarborough pursues to protect its the Scarborough Marsh, its watersheds, and the remaining farmland will determine whether we grow in a balanced way or whether we lose Scarborough's definitive character. And so I really think it's sort of an existential question, and would love to carry on the work that the current council, I think, has really teed us up for. So now you might think this green agenda is just nice. You know, it's just a nicety. It's not really a necessity. But I would beg to differ. If we don't care for our natural assets, the impacts that we will suffer will not be nice. We will lose, and we will also lose some significant fiscal and economic benefits. Every dollar that we spend on land protection is either a net neutral or a net positive on our town's budget. It really reduces the pressure on some basic services. Single-family homes cost the town more than they bring in taxes, you know. So open space doesn't, in fact, overload schools. Open space doesn't clog roads, and open space doesn't strain public safety services. So, you know, there's some real benefits there. But yet again, I want to emphasize, I'm not talking about stopping growth. Really, it's about managing it and directing it. And conservation is a tool, not an impediment, and we need to use this tool. So I see it, that as also a plus. And finally, I really think that spending on conservation will attract additional resources to our town. We can recapture some of our federal tax dollars that go out and bring them back to Scarborough. So, you know, spending on conservation leverages those funds and brings them back. So why not capture outside money for our benefit? So I'll just end there, and thank you.
Thank you, Cressy Maurer. And now an opening statement from our candidate running for the 2-year term previously held by Jean Marie Caterina, Bill Donovan.
Thank you, Kevin. Let me just start by saying, when you run for a position like this, you do some homework to make sure that you're going to be prepared to properly fulfill the duties and represent the community. And when I started to do that, I suddenly realized that our town council has been doing a heck of a job. And I could go over all the ways they have been addressing issues of traffic, growth, conservation, capital projects, goes on and on. And I would love to be involved with an organization of members who were that focused. And I know that it never happens by itself, because I see the friendly faces that I've known for years, Tom, Karen. We have a terrific town staff, Liam. But this town council has performed and performed well. So I just thought I'd mention it because I feel strongly about it. Kevin covered a little bit of my background, but I will step back and introduce myself a little bit to people. I spent 40 years representing private nonprofit hospitals in municipal matters, in court, in appellate courts, in federal court. It was a long time, and I'm actually very glad to be retired. It was a lot of work, but it's helpful, and so I've always been interested in helping out at the municipal level, because that's where I lived so much of my professional life. The last 10 years have been terrific since I retired. 6 as a counselor, and I enjoyed them immensely. And 4 as the president of the Scarborough Public Library, and I've enjoyed that immensely. Participated in hiring Chip Schrader, who has turned out to be a 10 out of 10 for us in terms of a new leader following Nancy Crowell. That's been terrific. My town council years, I chaired for about half of them, and I always supported responsible budgeting. We started out maybe 10, 12 years ago with this idea that we were going to try and keep the budget at no more than a 3% increase annually, so that and we had to work with the school board, and you have to work. That is hard work, because they have their ideas, and I am personally strongly interested in the public school system. I came from a father who was a high school principal and a mother who was a teacher and a librarian. So I grew up with that. And so that you'll find I rarely will ever not support a school initiative. But we had a 3% limit because it sort of matched up with what the economy was growing at. And so it became affordable. Schools, the capital budget priority for me is schools. I am been with the library for a long time, but I recognize public school system is one of the cornerstones of what makes our country great. Free public schools. So that is it for me. The 30-30 initiative of the town, I think, is a wonderful initiative. A key element of that plan is the support of the Scarborough Land Trust bond. That money isn't just given to them, they have to earn it. And we control it as town council members. So that's a terrific way to control growth and support the conservation and the beautiful wildlife setting that we have here. I wrote the senior property tax relief legislation ordinance when we first adopted it. Worked with Jean Marie on that, and I strongly support promoting affordable housing. So that's sort of where I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill Donovan. All right, let's get to our questions, and we've had quite a few come in. And we're going to go with Scott Doherty first, and let's try to keep it around 2 minutes if we can. You're right, Scott. We addressed this earlier, and it's come up as a question already for this portion of our candidates night. We all saw what happened in December. We all saw what happened with the January storm, and then the storm I just couldn't believe in 30 years of living down here, what we experienced in late March. So Scott Doherty, and how do we prevent Route 1 and Pine Point from becoming unusable due to rising sea levels from climate change? It's
You know, Pine Point seems to be fine. The sandbar at Pine Point's building up more. It seems to be more protected than ever before to me. Actually, the problem is Black Point. The roads eroded there. They blocked it off. Again, another frustrating thing to me. I drive down there every morning to check the ocean to see if I'm gonna go out to haul. And I can't anymore because I got it blocked off. And they put, they blocked it off because they was afraid it would collapse, but they put Jersey barriers. And Jersey barriers weigh as much as a car, and they put 50 to 100 of them on there. And so I think it's, but they could take the Jersey barriers away because it's safe now, because if it didn't collapse with all those Jersey barriers on it, then it's not going to. I'd like to see that, restored. It's basically taking rocks, but the DEP, they had a problem at Black Rock Road. They wouldn't allow them to put rocks. They had to put arsenic pressure treated lumber. That's all they could use, which made no sense whatsoever. So you have to get, the state level has to approve these things, and they were supposed to approve it speedily, after those big storms, and you really have to get together. I think, rock walls is the way to go at an angle. But I don't know what else to tell you except for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott Doherty. Corey Fellows, after the storms that we've been having, how do we prevent Route 1 and Pine Point from becoming unusable due to rising sea levels from climate change?
Well, obviously, a lot of that gets to, bigger macro issues over which we have limited control here at the municipal level. But we are blessed with the largest saltwater marsh in Maine here in Scarborough, which is in some ways the heart and soul of the town. And historically, marshes, one of the many roles that they play is that they serve as a buffer from storm surges and sea level rise and things like that. And marshes are dynamic, and they can adapt over time, and they can expand. But as has been documented in research and in some recent news coverage on this, and when they get hemmed in by development and they can't sort of adapt and migrate because their houses built all around them, then that becomes an issue. So I think, it's sort of gets back partly to the theme of having, targeted growth and trying to really protect not only the marsh itself, and the beaches themselves, but making sure that we're buffering as much as possible. Some of that comes through land use, through the land use ordinances, and some of it comes into play through site plan review in front of groups like the planning board. But yeah, as someone who lives down the Pine Point, I mean, we were cut off twice during those storms and had to go all the way out Ross Road to even get up to Route 1. So, and even driving here this evening, there was water lapping up in the parking lot of the Audubon, and we're well past that supermoon. So it's definitely a clear and present issue.
Thank you, Corey Fellows. Before Cressy Maurer answers the question, I've got to say it. If you have questions and you're watching from home or online, the email is hello@sedcomaine, MAINE.com. hello@sedcomaine.com for any questions for people watching us live tonight on September 25th. Cressy Maurer, the effect of climate change on our shores, on our roads, your response to how you would work to help navigate that.
Absolutely. I will echo a lot of what Corey has been saying. I think it's a combination of investing in the resiliency of our infrastructure. Is gonna mean raising Route 1 and portions of Route 9 so that we don't have these islands cut off from public safety. But it's also fundamentally investing in the marsh and helping it to keep up with sea level rise. And that is a possibility with different kinds of restoration projects. And luckily we do have a grant coming to the town where we will actually develop a pipeline of projects to help the marsh adapt as the sea level rises so that we don't just lose it all. And in fact, we retain that ability to buffer these violent storms. I would think of a salt marsh sort of as a shock absorber. And it's really, really important that we save our shock absorber because it, reduces the Route 1, although it's been, overlapped by flooding, has never been violently destroyed by storms, and that's thanks to the marsh. So really, it's investing in the marsh, it's investing in also the getting ahead and identifying what infrastructure is really going to be impacted by that sea level rise, and either raising it or, building greater resiliency in that infrastructure.
Thank you, Cressy Mauer. Bill Donovan, how do we prevent Route 1 and Pine Point Road from becoming unusable due to rising sea levels caused from climate change?
Some of you know, I live at Harmon's Island at Higgins Beach. And the flooding that occurred this spring was extraordinary. We were locked on Harmon's Island with no way to get off. And if you're as old as I am, you'd like to be able to get to the hospital if that circumstance happens to arise. So I appreciate personally the importance. I also think that it's a town issue, it's a state issue, it's a national issue. We need to make a commitment to take care of the factors that are causing the rising tides and the impact. I would look to seeking professional help because I know Cressy knows a lot about this, but I don't, how the best way to go. And I would look to professional engineering services to identify the best way we can protect ourselves.
Thank you, Bill Donovan. All right, we're going to go to our second question, again, coming from our audience here at Town Hall. And Corey Fellows will lead off this round, and we'll just work right around the table back to Scott. Corey, in your role as a town councilor, how do you plan to help prioritize capital improvement projects for the town?
2 minutes? Yeah. So, I mean, I think that the key word there is prioritize. And I think, I understand that there are a lot of concerns about spending. There are some people who are less comfortable with certain levels of debt, municipal debt, than others. But I think the reality, and I think this is something, to what Bill said earlier, that I think it's something that the current and recent councils have done a pretty good job of, even though, it hasn't been without some debate, is really trying to look at these things deliberately. And I think it's important to start with what the need is and really think about what it is that we're solving for. And that to me as a counselor, if I'm elected, to me personally, the way I would want to look at it and help to try to frame it is, we're not solving for some arbitrary number or percentage, even though it's good to have benchmarks so that we're, as Bill was talking about earlier, we don't have big shocks to the system. But I think we need to look at what the sort of the pressing needs are. We obviously know that the school need is critical. That should be right at the top of the list. And really look at sort of staggering things in a way that, again, it's, we try to avoid sticker shock. And we do have a lot of resources. We have a strong commercial tax base. We have a growing community, again, which comes with some mixed effects. But I do think we have resources that we can leverage. And we know we can look ahead and look at contracts that may need to be negotiated. My understanding is that teacher contracts are going to need to be negotiated next year. That'll be something that the town and the council specifically, and obviously the school board will have to look at and anticipate. And it's like any form of budgeting. It's really looking ahead. In the work that I do, we have, when we're working on a construction project, we have what they call look ahead schedules, look ahead budgets, and you're sort of looking at what's going to be coming down the pike beyond the immediate future, so that hopefully nothing comes as a huge surprise. And then hopefully you have some buffer and some contingency for unanticipated things that may come up. But I really like to see the town, the council in particular, tackle these things from a position of strength and looking at it proactively and not, again, as I said about schools in particular earlier, not always feel like we're on the defensive.
Thanks, Corey. Cressy, how do you plan to help prioritize capital improvement projects for the town?
Well, I think there was a satisfaction survey done in 2023, and I think we have to pay attention to that, to what our residents are telling us. I mean, traffic congestion is one of the big things they're giving us feedback on, and schools. And I think that's what's gonna rise to the top. But like Corey, you know, we do want to be fiscally responsible, so we do have to think about how do we phase that in? You know, what kind of debt load we can take on, or debt instruments we can use or not. And phasing it in, and then attempting to see if we can leverage funds, you know, either state funds or others to help us accomplish some of these goals, these capital improvement projects, so.
Thank you, Cressy Mauer. Bill Donovan, how do you plan to help prioritize capital improvements for the
Well,
town?
I think it's sort of, there's two steps involved here. First, and congratulations to the town council, we need to determine what we can afford. And the town council has its finance committee looking at that very issue. So that would be one. And then prioritizing projects. For me, it's easy. The school problem has reached a boiling point. If you look at what the school board has identified as the point at which we will be putting kids anywhere and everywhere, is only a few years away. So we must find a solution. And I think this attitude of, well, we got 4 different ways to look at it. And now we're gonna have a committee try and boil it down to one and have a community consensus on what it is. So we have an overwhelming vote in support of it. I personally think that for pre-K, K, first and second grade, neighborhood schools is a really important thing. And so I look at those as the first options to go. But it's what we need, not what we want, is the driving factor here. We need to identify amongst projects, do we really need this now? Yes. Then that moves to the top of the list. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill Donovan. Scott Doherty, we're back to you. How do you plan to help prioritize capital improvement projects for the town as a town councilor?
As far as prioritizing, I think that the town has done, like they said, preparing ahead. I think the town has prepared ahead. I think we've built brand new schools. We got rid of the junior high that I went to, and I thought it was a perfectly good building, but we bulldozed it and built a brand new one. I mean, we're way ahead of schedule. This, town hall wasn't voted on by the public to be built. It was voted against, and it was built anyway. That was the first thing that really frustrated me with the town. It was a 3-story. It could have been a 2-story, and you wouldn't have had the elevator, and you would have had handicapped accessible in the front and in the back. And you could have cut the budget maybe in half of this building. So it's prioritizing what we need and not what we want. And I agree with Bill on that, 100%.
Thank you, Scott Doherty. All right, let's move to our next question. Cressy, you're going to be the answering first. Again, we have Scott Doherty, Corey Fellows, and Cressy Mauer running for 2 3-year terms. Bill Donovan is running unopposed for the 2 remaining years of the seat formerly held by Jean Marie, or currently held by Jean Marie Caterina. So again, a question coming from our audience. Cressy, what's your position on the Gorham Connector?
Well, I was at the meeting last week. So I am landing on the side of really rethinking that whole thing. I believe that we were just moving the problem from one side of our town to another. And the other side of town is got some pretty important, it's got a Smiling Hill Farm, which is a historic farm. It's got an important stream that protects important fishery resource and and farms. So I believe that we have to sort of rethink and reimagine how to deal with the traffic problem. Building a road will simply mean a short-term relief of the congestion, but over time, it's going to lead to more exurban development in Gorham and Westbrook, and that's just going to overload that road eventually. And we're going to lose some important farmland in the process. So I am not supportive of it in its current form, and I think that we have to reimagine it in one that may emphasize more public transit and alternative forms of transportation.
Thank you, Cressy. Bill Donovan, where do you stand on the Gorham Connector?
Hey. This question always reminded me of law school. And there's a program in law school called Moot Court. And Moot Court involved presenting a legal question where both sides could equally argue their position. And I've read the same articles that all of you have read. I've talked to people who feel strongly that we should do this, that we're just chipping at the edges if we're talking, trying to have bicycles and a rotary solve the problem. Other people are saying, no, give them a chance. We need to have every single one of these alternatives. And I'm not talking about getting a train out to Gorham. So where I came into this meeting thinking, I can't wait to hear what the Department of Transportation and Augusta says, because our community has been heard. People have said, we're not positive on this yet. Other people feel they are, but there's people who say, it's not a good environmental project. It just pushes it down the road and you'll have the problem back again in another 5 or 10 years. So I would say I'm glad I don't have to make the decision on whether this goes forward, because that decision is going to be made in Augusta.
Thank you, Bill Donovan. Scott Doherty, your position on the Gorham Connector.
Yeah, at first I was like, yeah, we need it. I drive out there occasionally, and basically the people that have to commute that every day,
Right.
coming, going out north at 5 PM or coming in, in the morning, whichever way you're going, you're a gridlock, it's stuck. So it's definitely a problem, and I don't think there's any solution to that as far as the road, unless you wanted to make it a 4-lane highway out 114 somehow. And you talk about taking land by eminent domain, you've got businesses and everything. So I thought it was a great idea to cut across. On the other hand, I am very much opposed to eminent domain. I don't like it when government's gonna take people's land when they don't want to sell it. I think if it's that important that you have to do it, as far as eminent domain, they say they'll give you fair market value. Well, that fair market value, if it's sentimental value, whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, I think that eminent domain should be, have to give you double the value, at least. And even people wouldn't want to sell that, if there was some way to come up with a solution to make this go across and have everybody that was a willing participant to sell the land. I mean, to go through Smiling Hill Farm, that's, I don't know how, I haven't really heard how they actually feel. I assume they're opposed to it. Yeah, so, yeah. I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Scott Doherty. Corey Fellows, your position on the Gorham Connector.
Well, as has been mentioned, this process is, and those who followed this know this, but the process is really being driven by the state, you know, the Turnpike Authority and DOT. And I remember when on the planning board, when we used to sit here and we would be asked to give advisory opinions on things that like CMP wanted to do. And it was very clear that at the end of the day, we really weren't going to move the needle one way or the other. Not to say that we were just going through the motions. There may have been some input that had some influence, but this feels to me somewhat similar in that it's ultimately out of our hands. My understanding from following the council's recent discussions and deliberations is that the town's, you know, even sort of the council's sort of advisory role may be behind it by the time the new council sits down here. So that said, I definitely, like others, I completely understand the concerns, the frustration with the gridlock. And if you try to take a left turn there, you're basically dependent on the kindness of strangers certain times of the day. But I have mixed feelings about trying to alleviate traffic by building more roads. And I completely agree with Scott actually about eminent domain. I think it should be a very high bar that really is reserved for truly extraordinary circumstances. So.
Okay, thank you, Corey Fellows. We are coming up at 7:50, so we've got another half hour of questions, and then we'll do closing statements in our last 10 minutes. Bill Donovan, we're going to start this round with you, and it's something you alluded to when you made your opening statement. And it's a question that we've got from the audience. What is something you feel that the town council has gotten right in the past year?
Well, what I liked is they're addressing all of the issues that we're being presented with for questions, because the community feels these are the issues of the day. And to me, traffic and growth I hear it all the time. I hear it in my own household. So, and I pay a lot more attention to that. And so that to me is important. And when I looked at, there's new growth ordinance. There's a transportation study that's underway. The town council has been active in those issues that we all consider the issues of the day for the community of Scarborough. And that's why when I did my homework to prepare to come here today, I said, wow, town council's been very busy.
Thank you, Bill Donovan. Scott Doherty, what is something that you feel the town council has got right in the last year?
I can't think of anything. All I can say is I think that they're doing their best and what they feel is best for the town. I really do think that that's the way they believe it, whether I agree with them or not. I think everybody that gets on it is doing what they think is best. That's the goal. And I think that's what it should be, is everybody in town, not special groups, not special interests. You should be looking at the whole group of the town. And I think they have tried to do that. I think they've tried to, do what they thought was best for the town.
Thank you, Scott Doherty. Corey Fellows?
To me, it really was the way that the council started this calendar year in January, sort of doing the reset coming out of the school referendum. I was at that first January meeting, and there was a lot of public comment. There was some real kind of frustration and acrimony expressed about the process and about the council supposedly not listening, and others not listening to people's concerns. And I thought the council did a nice job of kind of turning the temperature down a little bit and really kind of slowing things down, taking the time to reach out through surveys and other outreach to really drill down on what were the reasons behind the way the vote went, which, as I think most of us know now, was really kind of a perfect storm of concerns about cost, people really being invested in the local community primary school model, and then even some more localized concerns about access through Sawyer Road and things like that. So it really wasn't something that was just very simple black and white, and I thought that the council did a good job of stepping back, listening and resetting things, and then eventually setting things in motion so that we've had these working groups, and the next council will have the opportunity to look at recommendations. And
Thank you, Corey.
hopefully there'll be some real buy-in on that.
Thank you, Corey Fellows. Cressy Mauer?
I really think that my impression from going to the various council meetings is that the council has really been listening to the community. I really feel like it's put its ear to the ground, and, you know, the survey of satisfaction, all of that. For example, in my own neighborhood, which I live near Maple Avenue, you know, they responded to the community's desire to calm traffic there, and they worked with them, you know, they engaged them in developing a new I think it's an ordinance anyway. So, yeah, so I think that the council is being responsive to community demands, and I admire them for that. In the other area is, you know, the sort of the tangle of cannabis. I have to admire them for that. It's sort of not targeting that industry and being fair to them, but also listening to the community and saying, look, we're going to give you, you know, a new permit process that you have to follow. It's going to be fair to you, but we have to protect our neighborhoods and listen to our constituency. So just a number of things like that. And of course, you know, in my own bailiwick, I think that adopting the 30 by 30, really putting, you know, sort of a commitment behind that. I admire that very much. We're the only town in Maine that's done that. So hats off to the current council.
Thank you, Cressy Mauer, and we'll move on to our next question. We've actually, from our audience, had like 2 or 3 variations of the same question. And Scott Doherty, how are you going to help move a school solution forward in this town?
My feeling, I've made it very clear, is to keep the small schools. You know, the school solution is add on to the schools if you had to, if you have to have an addition, and it's obviously going to take millions of dollars to do that too, but it will be a lot less than 160 million. And those schools are in really good shape, good condition. Even the portables that are on them are almost built in structure. They are portables, but they're very well built portables. And maybe that's the thing that you should do, is you should invest in them, and they should have many years ago, is put additions on the smaller schools long time ago. And so that's what I push for, is the smaller schools. The other schools, I think that they're all brand new. So I don't think there's an issue with them.
Okay, thank you. Corey Fellows, how are you going to help move a school solution forward?
I think a lot of it is kind of a continuation of what I mentioned in response to the last question, of kind of continuing building on the momentum and the process that's been moving forward since earlier this year. And I don't think it's my place at this point to sort of take a position on any particular scenario. There's this newly constituted version of the working group that is going to be working with an outside consultant, independent consultant. And if elected to the council, I'll look forward to working with my fellow councilors to digest those recommendations and make sure that we have good communication throughout, and the process is as transparent as possible. You know, starting even with that somewhat contentious January meeting earlier this year, almost everyone, 99.9% of the people who spoke, prefaced what they said with, of course, we understand that we need to do something about the schools. So I want to take everyone at their word and really work together to do that. You know, our oldest son was the part of the last class that went through Wentworth That he was there the year before they tore it down, and it was almost literally falling down around them. And I think sometimes there's a tendency to think, oh, well, they're getting along, it's nice enough. It's as nice as the school I went to, but I don't think we can kick the can too far down the road, and these projects have a way of only getting more expensive. So I think it's a combination of being deliberate, communicating, but also having a sense of urgency, because it really is an emergency.
Thank you, Corey Fellows. Cressy Mauer, how are you going to help move a school solution forward?
I will echo a lot of what I've already heard. I mean, we really have to engage with the committee that's going to take on, developing options. And I think then building and communicating, building on that, really engaging the community, both in getting their full support and backing of this, and communicating the emergency, the fact that it's an emergency, that we can't keep kicking this down the road. We repeatedly kicked it down the road, and it's just the cost to Scarborough and to the our youth is too high. So it is coming up with maybe also a more fiscally conservative option, but one that will meet the needs of the community. I do hear a lot of people saying that they want to keep the community-based K through pre-K and K through 2. So and so responding to that, and then really selling it, and making sure people understand but we can't delay this anymore.
Thank you, Cressy Mauer. Bill Donovan, how are you going to help move a school solution forward?
This new committee is a good start. We've come down to 4 proposals. I think our community needs to understand what those proposals are, how they differ. Because I think being informed, and when I looked at it and I had a sheet of paper, it took some effort to fully appreciate what is it that they're talking about for differences in each one of these. I think there are arguments that can convince people who might otherwise vote against it, because it's an expensive proposition. No matter what, you're going to have an expensive proposition. Is that worse schools means lower property values. So you're betting against yourself. You're lowering the value of your property when you allow this problem to become a crisis. And lastly, we need to get out of the school board's way. And if at first you try and fail, try again. It's a matter of perseverance. It's our top priority for capital budget, capital items, and we need to push forward with a commitment from all of us who might be town council members to support the school board in this effort.
Thank you, Bill Donovan. And I think the process of selecting the actual committee members is in process right now, and will be coming up to the town council fairly soon. Okay, I saw it in my preparation for tonight. Corey Fellows, you're going to start off our next question, and we're just after 8 o'clock now. It's kind of appropriate for you. Affordability of our existing residences is a concern. What specific actions would you take to try to keep Scarborough affordable for everyone?
Thanks. There are a lot of dimensions to this, and there are, as with some other issues like climate resiliency, there are things that have to happen at other levels of government, state and federal as well. But I think there are some things that the town is already doing that it can continue and maybe expand. Some of that revolves around land use policy and providing for maybe some additional density where it's appropriate, where there's infrastructure, places like the Downs, which that's already sort of baked, and in terms of the land use platform there. But I think consistent with our comprehensive plan that tries to direct development to growth centers where there's already infrastructure, both in terms of transportation, water and sewer and so forth. You can develop a little bit more multifamily. I think one of the things that you see with folks who work in this field and study this field is that when we talk about affordability, sometimes there's a tendency to assume that you're just talking about quote unquote affordable housing, but there is a ripple effect where really all new housing helps. And that obviously has to be balanced with concerns about growth and traffic and the tax base and so forth. But I think if the town can foster an environment where housing can be developed within the framework of the growth management ordinance and the zoning that we have, and really encourage a range of development, which includes apartments, which includes smaller single-family homes, so that you don't have to live on a half-acre or acre lot in order to have a home, and really just provide more of a range of opportunities. So there are other things too, but I want to stay within my 2 minutes.
Thank you, Corey. Cressy Mauer, what specific actions would you take to try and keep Scarborough affordable for everyone?
Well, I think we do need more housing units, and we have to be creative in trying to achieve more of those. So I think inevitably, and I think we have sort of chosen this path, is densification, but in the right places. And, with the necessary proximity to open space for those places, but redeveloping our older corridors like Route 1 and allowing maybe some denser housing in there. I would also think about, is there any more we can do with greater flexibility for accessory dwelling units on existing lots, so that you can create, smaller units maybe for seniors who are downsizing, or young families that are just starting out, or young people. So thinking about out of the box in some cases, and allowing additional development in our already developed residential areas in the Route 1 corridor, and maybe thinking of things like duplexes or townhouses where, it would be more affordable, smaller square footage, but more affordability.
Thank you, Cressy. Bill Donovan, what specific actions would you take to try and keep Scarborough affordable for everyone?
And it's a very complicated question, because Scarborough's prices are really high when you look at the communities that we're compared to, and just go west just a little bit. And their pricing is significantly less than ours. Scarborough is a heck of a community. It's located in a terrific location, has services, has the ocean, has the beaches. And so lowering prices is probably never going to happen. That's a fool's errand. What you can do are some of the ideas, and this is Corey's field of expertise. So I listen carefully when you have things like zoning amendments, what Cressy said about having secondary, we have a lot of 1 and 2 acre zoning, and there is space to put a secondary unit on those. And you have to be respectful of the neighborhood into which you're now suggesting that occur. But everything should be on the table as far as zoning and planning is concerned, to allow this to be a community that is affordable, available, welcoming. And more than anything, you want the community to be known as a welcoming community. We're not putting our hands up and saying, no, not you. That's not us. That's not us.
Thank you, Bill Donovan. And finally, Scott Doherty, what specific actions would you take to try and keep Scarborough affordable for everyone?
Yeah, again, it's a tough issue. Like you said, the values in Scarborough are so high. I think the accessory unit is the way to go. The town was dead opposed to them. You couldn't build anything. You couldn't have a mother-in-law apartment at all, and then now they've come around and they're doing more of that. And I think it's a win-win with those, because I'm all for the individual people in town getting things, not necessarily big developers making big projects or whatever, and that's probably what you have to do too, but I think the individual people, it'd be great for their taxes if they could build an accessory unit that, and your taxes are going out of sight, then you have that income from that. On the other hand, you know, everybody wants their own home, and I think it's best if somebody, a young person starting out, if they can afford to buy a house. So, I mean, maybe designate areas for, never heard this, you know, you hear of this tiny house thing, but I mean, they should probably have neighborhoods. You know, back in the day, it was a trailer park. The young people starting out went into a trailer park, but a trailer park costs so much now, you might as well buy a house. And you have one person owning it, and that you just have to pay the lot rent. I think if you had areas designated, and the town doesn't allow it in ordinances now, but have really small lots with really tiny houses that individuals own themselves, and young people can get equity into a house instead of renting. Everybody's renting because it's the only option they have, and that's going through the roof. So, you know, there's definitely some ways to go to, and I think that you should do it. Yeah.
Thanks, Scott Doherty. We got a little more time left, and if you're watching at home or listening online, and you have a question, the email address is hello@sedcomaine, MAINE.com. So, if you get a chance, we've got a few minutes and we could get in another question. Cressy, we're gonna go to you now. Hey, let's spend some more money. With a community center being in the last 3 comprehensive plans, 30+ years, over 100,000 spent on surveys, and a great deal of input from the citizens of our community saying they want a community center. What will you do to make that a reality?
Good question. I haven't really thought of the community center that much. I obviously would, if it hasn't already been done, is try to obviously review what has been done over the past, is it 30 years, you said? And see, again, what can we afford, what's fiscally responsible, yet, you know, would we require a bond fund for this? Would we incorporate into our capital budgeting? That's something to think about. It's important that, I think what Scarborough lacks is a sort of, you know, village center or traditional downtown, and the community center could potentially serve as a proxy for that and might be really worth investing in the Downs area. So I'm assuming that's where it would go in. Maybe we think about impact fees on development to help, you know, set aside money to build that. Those are kind of the ideas I have.
Thank you, Cressy Maurer. Bill Donovan, your thoughts on the community center, which is also subject to a lot of attention here in town.
For those of you who haven't been paying attention to the community center issue, the town council appointed a committee, and it sat for the better part of a year. And as the library president, I was appointed as a representative to that committee. So I sat in on every meeting and was treated just like any other member of that committee. And since I'm crazy about recreation and sports, I'm all for that kind of thing. And of course, people would say, well, it conflicts with your library expansion, doesn't it? Well, yeah, but we'll all make do. We'll find ways to solve all our problems, is my viewpoint on these 3 big ones: school, community center, and library. We will solve them. It just takes more effort than we've put in so far. One of the things the report, which is a very good report, identified was pay as you go. That 90+% of the operating cost of a facility, and this facility that was proposed by the committee was soup to nuts. facility. Two different swimming pools, one traditional laps, the other kind of a kiddie kind of setting. And teaching kids to swim is an important thing. And having recreation opportunities in our long winters is an important thing. So there's a lot to speak for it. I guess I would say, I'm hoping that it will come up after the school issue is resolved. And that the community's support conceptually for it maintains itself through a referendum vote, because it's not cheap. So that's, I mean, that's the long and the short of it. Anyone who's read the report saw that it's a lot of money.
Thank you, Bill Donovan. Scott Doherty, your thoughts on the community center, which again is being discussed in town?
Right, yeah, again, my view with recreation and government providing recreation and taxing people and then saying, we're gonna take your taxes, we're gonna put your taxes up, and then you're gonna recreate where we tell you to recreate. You know, I think that you shouldn't have to be forced to go and do recreation where you don't want to, but you have to because you have no money left because your taxes took it all, so you don't have any recreation money left. You know, the town goes about it wrong. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars studying. You had a few people thought it was a good idea. What you should do is have a referendum first and see if the majority in town wants it. And then maybe think about spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to study it. But to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to study something, 30 years ago they started this and we had a referendum and they voted it down. And a lot of elderly people, the council members said, we don't understand why these people are voting it down. This is for the elderly. This is a rec center for the elderly to be able to go and use. And they're like, I can't afford my taxes now. I'm going to have to move out of town if you build a recreation center for me. I don't want it. And that's what I hear all the way through. So you have to, it has to be the majority of people in town vote for it. You have to put it out to referendum first before you have all the committees and stuff and spend all these hours and all this time on something that people don't want.
Thank you, Scott Doherty. Corey Fellows, your thoughts on the community center in Scarborough in 2024?
Well, certainly in my experience and from what I've seen of survey results and talking to a lot of people and just kind of lived experience, I think there is a lot of pent up demand for a community center. I think part of the challenge all along has been kind of what exactly do we mean by community center and how many different constituencies do we try to serve through that? You know, we wanted to have a pool, we wanted to have an ice rink, do we want to have a senior center as part of it? You know, we had one of our kids was a high school swimmer and they had to go to Cape Elizabeth four nights a week, take buses so that they could swim in Cape Elizabeth, or, you know, in some cases people will have to go to South Portland, things like that. So I do think that there is real demand out there for it. I think it's been one of those items where it's never been the right time. It's never been the right time, never been the right proposal. There's always been some other fire to put out, so to speak. Right now, we have the school emergency. I totally agree with Bill that I think in a perfect world, we would hopefully segue fairly smoothly from a school solution into a community center, and maybe, you know, if that goes well, we can sort of build on that momentum and hopefully some goodwill there. And I do think there needs to be a lot of continued outreach. But as with all of these things, it ultimately takes some will and some leadership to get these things done. And I don't think, you know, I know we're not talking about the land bond, but as with land preservation, I don't think any community has ever regretted having that type of public space at the end of the day, even if it's a little bit painful getting there. So I think again, it's all about prioritizing what is it that is the greatest need got to tackle the school first and then hopefully turn our attention to the community center.
Thanks, Corey Fellows. Well, it's about that time. We've had a lot of questions that have come in. Almost every question that I've asked has come from the audience or from people watching. We're going to move now to the closing statements, but we'll go with Bill Donovan. We'll go first. He's running unopposed. After Bill's done, we'll go to the contested election, the competitive election for 2 seats, 3-year terms between Scott Doherty, Corey Fellows, and Cressy Maurer. And Scott, you'll begin when we get to that point. I'm giving you a chance to get your thoughts together for your closing statements. And Corey mentioned one of the referendums that we're going to be voting for here locally. And I was going to ask, but I will bring them up. The cruiser and body worn cameras for the police department. We'll be asked to vote on that. That's $1 million that we're being asked to approve or reject. A replacement pumper truck for the fire department, also $1 million. It would replace a 20-year-old truck for the department's apparatus replacement plan. So that would be one that you're going to be voting for. And then, as Corey alluded to, the land bond replenishment, $6 million for the Parks and Conservation land bond to build the coffers back up. So those are the 3 local referendums. And then on top of it, we have 5 questions that we're going to be asked on the state ballot for referendums, one of which, of course, getting all the attention, the flag for the state of Maine, but also an R&D bond for 25 million, roads, a historic community buildings bond for 10 million, and a maintenance of recreation trails, $30 million. So these, and also a $5 million a $5,000 limit for political action committee money. So this is a big election, of course. It's a presidential year, and the ballots, the absentee ballots are available. Go on the town website, and you can get all the information to get an absentee ballot. And I understand the numbers are way up on people going for an absentee ballot. Also, early voting is, I'm sorry, I don't have the date right in front of me, but is getting ready to be underway, and it's going to be held at the police station at the Public Safety Building. So a lot going on come November 5th. And I want to thank the people that assisted me behind the scenes tonight. Karen Martin from Sedco, who's been relaying all the questions to me. Leroy Crockett from the Scarborough Chamber of Commerce, and Chip Schrader from the Scarborough Public Library, who have been running the timer and giving me instructions as I go through the night, which makes it all happen. We do a lot of work to pull this off, and especially Leroy making a lot of phone calls on my behalf to invite people and make sure they knew everything that was going on. So with that, we will go to closing statements, and we will start with Bill Donovan, who is running for the 2-year term vacated when Jean Marie Caterina stepped down to go for the county commissioner position. Bill Donovan.
Just to touch on a couple of things, we have mentioned them, but, and I'll be brief. I think this land bond is a real twofer for the community. I think you get the benefit of taking land in a conservation land control. We're taking it out of development. And I think that's part of a good strategy for slowing down development and managing development in Scarborough. I think it's also a huge win for the conservation side of us. And so I want people to appreciate there's a lot of value, and the town council controls the way in which that money is used. Scarborough Land Trust gets first shot at all that money, but only with the say-so of the town council. So it's a very controlled environment. So that's one. I knew Corey, didn't know Cressy until recently when I met her. Our third candidate. We don't know each other, but I think it's worth knowing that Corey is a statewide leader in affordable housing. This project that you read about in the paper at the Downs, 51 units of affordable housing for the disabled, people who are in wheelchairs. This is a project that will break new ground nationally. And so people should appreciate that that's the sort of candidate that we have in Corey Fellows. And Scarborough Land Trust, I was on the Scarborough Land Trust because I believe in their mission and I love to walk their trails. And I resigned only because I was inundated with the work associated with being a town councilor. And so, but I've always supported them. And that is why I admired Cressy's credentials as well. And I'll close on a point of personal privilege. We all learned Cressy has been to Peru, been to Chile, speaks Spanish. Well, that touches me because my youngest came out of an orphanage in Santiago, Chile, 30 years ago, and love of my life. So nice to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill Donovan. Scott Doherty, your closing statement.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered it all tonight. I mean, all the questions were very good and everything that's happening in town. And I think I've made it very clear how I feel about everything. I'm direct and to the point. And, you know, I ain't trying to get voted in by glossing it over. It is what it is and what I think how it should go, the way I've seen the town going. I think that, you know, you have an option right here with this, the third floor in the town hall and the third floor in the new fire station. You could make that for the new school that they need, the new classrooms. You could have the classrooms right there. That'd save millions of dollars. And it's already built. We already spent the money to do the brand new building. It's all done. We had, you know, they had the foresight of building it first and early, and it's an option. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott Doherty. Corey Fellows.
Thank you. Certainly like to thank Sedco and the Chamber, Chip and Leroy and Karen for helping to facilitate all of this. And I appreciate all the questions from everyone. And thank you, Bill, for your kind words. I also just want to, before I get into my closing, just piggyback a little bit on what Bill said about the land bond. I agree that it is a twofer. I think it's also important for folks to recognize that it's not a blank check. It's really more of like a sort of a potential credit line. And there's a lot of process, multi-step process that involves multiple public hearings before any particular allocation is committed to. And there's some really powerful, you know, they call leveraging in development, where you have that funding to start with, you can tap into other resources from state, federal government, other donors. And so it can be really powerful. And as I alluded to earlier, I don't think any town has ever regretted preserving land. I don't think anybody regrets having places like Fuller Farm, places like that. But to close, you know, I've really been struck as I've talked with people, friends and family, including those from outside of town, about the fact that I'm running. And one of the questions I've gotten has been, do you run to represent a certain part of town or a certain neighborhood? And I, of course, explain that all Scarborough councilors serve at large, meaning we all represent, I shouldn't say we, councilors all represent the entire town. And that's the spirit in which I would serve, regardless of where you live in town, how long you've lived in town, whether you're a renter or an owner, who you voted for, whether you voted for me or not. I would represent everyone in town. There may be times when we don't always agree on the best way to accomplish things or what certain priorities should be, but I'll always work in good faith to try to work in consensus as much as possible. There are a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities in front of Scarborough, and I hope to have the opportunity to have a hand in that. And thank you again.
Thank you, Corey Fellows. Cressy Mauer, your closing statement.
Like Bill and Corey, I want to talk a little bit about the land bond. First of all, I want to make sure people know it isn't for the Scarborough Land Trust. It's a lot of people and a lot of organizations have used the land bond, Maine Farmland Trust, the city itself, in addition to Scarborough Land Trust. So it's built things like the Higgins Beach parking lot, which people love because they can access the beach. It's built Pleasant Hill Preserve. It's benefited the Historical Society that's been able to buy a historic building. So it really is open to anyone that would like to apply. And as Corey said, it's not a blank check. You have to jump through quite a few hoops in order to get that credit line when you're asking for it. There's a review of the land board reviews it, make sure it meets its criteria under the land bond, and then it has to go before the town council. The town council has to approve it. And then so it's not a blank check. And it has benefited the town greatly. So now on to my closing statement. So just as I want to say, as I'm a team player, I'm a pragmatic problem solver. I've outlined the challenges I think are important, but I'm really willing to be able to take up other important issues that we discussed today. The affordable housing, tax relief for seniors on fixed incomes, possibly transportation, school funding, all of those are very important topics. I think Scarborough is a leader in smart growth and conservation, but that it's facing growing pains in achieving its long-term vision. And I'd like to contribute to the effort to bring our community together to identify responses to meet those, to help alleviate those growing pains. I ask for your vote. If elected, I'll work for all of Scarborough's residents. I'll echo that as well, including preschoolers, youth, young families, retirees, and part-year residents. I think we're all in one boat together, and we need to row together to reach the opposite shore, which is a Scarborough that's economically resilient and vibrant, equitable, and that continues to protect its natural assets. So, thank you.
Thank you, Cressy. At the beginning, I mentioned that there were big shoes to fill with Jean Marie no longer on the council, Don Hamill, and Nick McGee. And I think that all four of you are capable and more than capable to fill those shoes. So I think we're in pretty good hands as a community. I want to thank you for coming tonight. I wish you the best in the election. I want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us. And I've been looking and I noticed that Lefty Donovan at the far end of the table, I got to believe he's either a first baseman, a pitcher, or an outfielder.
Center field.
Center field. Right down the middle. Thanks again for tuning us in. You can watch this on continuous rerun on Cable Access Channel 3. You can watch it on YouTube. And we'll be back next year. Get out and vote. Thank you and good night.